Welcome back, everyone. It's time to explore an area that is, once upon a time, already been explored. While it won't become official for a couple of screen transitions yet, we are, let's dispense with, oh my goodness, what just happened? Right, well, time and space, convoluted, etc. At any rate, series veterans will, of course, immediately recognize this area as Anor Londo, and there's no point in really being coy about it. This area in particular is the Tomb of the Dark Moon. Had we followed Yuri of Londor's questline, a couple of interesting events would take place here. However, since we did not, and we're now wearing her duds, there's not much here except a couple of miscellaneous treasures and a throwback. The reversal ring is something I almost refuse to dignify with an explanation, but it has the very odd function of switching your passive animations from male to female and vice versa. It's completely cosmetic and serves no purpose whatsoever. It's quite a bit of a trek, but not as much as it used to be, when it was an almost endless hallway. This corkscrew elevator will no doubt bring back fond memories of gargoyles and archers. It functions much like it did back in Dark Souls 1. It has several levels of elevation to mess around with. It's mostly just sort of a curious set piece. Nothing really happens on it here. There is a secret here, a well-hidden secret at that, but I want to do something first, just in case something bad happens, which it has been known to do on recording in this video game. There, it's official now. It's Anor Londo. This is the entrance to the great cathedral where Ornstein and Smo were fought. I just wanted to hit that bonfire, just in case I fell to an untimely death. I've gotten better about avoiding things like that, but it is known to happen, and this will just make a certain thing later easier anyway. If we send the corkscrew contraption back down, then we have access to another throwback, invisible pathways. To help out others in this area, I wanted to leave a message on this invisible bridge so that others might see it. And this used to work, but it does not seem to anymore. I can't see my own message or any others. Maybe they took that out so the secret was more well hidden. I think that's kind of dumb if they did. Hello there.
Name thyself, stranger. I am Yorshka, captain of the Dark Moon Knights. What beckoned thee to such a place? Thou thinkst too. Very well. Captain to this knightless company I remain. I will grant thee purpose. thou'st journeyed far. Hear my voice. If thou shalt swear by the covenant to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and Sister Guinevere, a blade that shall hunt the foes of our lords, then I place thee under the aegis and the power of the dark moon. Thou'rt now a blade of the dark moon, the only knight of our company. Swear this oath and face thy solemn duty. Oh, good blade of the dark moon, welcome home. If I can provide thee succor, only tell me how. Long ago, our father Gwyn, lamenting the waning of the fire, became cinder of his own will. Now, the fire is linked by the champions who have come in his stead. Such is the will of Father and the gods. And so the Dark Moon Knights took arms to watch over those who link the fire. But long ago, our company lost its last proper knight. Only its covenant was preserved to this day, until the time of thy visit. Heirdom taketh many forms, indeed. May I pose thee a question? This tower, this prison, stands tall and solitary, the contraption bridging its lower reaches long unmoving. So, by what path didst thou here ascend? Art thou a creature of the air? Or other winged thing?
Let's tell her the truth.
No, of course not. Forgive my prying. Think no more on mine asking. I am ashamed to say I know very little of anything. Long ago, Nasa, but only at Heirdom. Off so soon? May the dark moon watch over thee.
At any rate, Yorshka represents the place for both the Blue Sentinels and the recently anointed Blade of the Dark Moon to turn in their covenant items and rank up in that covenant. By equipping that covenant, you become the blue spirits that come to aid people who have the Way of Blue on. Back upon release, this basically didn't work at all, but lately I've been having much more luck with it, so I think they finally fixed whatever bit of code was preventing people from coming to the aid of others, which is nice. There's a couple of goodies on this precarious descent, but you do really... It will save you a lot of heartache if you equip the Silver Cat ring here. It's easy to slip and fall and take more damage than you thought you would. The Painting Guardian set and sword will also be familiar to Dark Souls 1 players, as they were the soldiers that guarded the painted world of Ariamis in a different Grand Cathedral. There are lots of cathedrals in Anor Londo, though that one we may never see, at least again. By dropping down there, we end up back in the Church of Yorshka, which now makes a lot more sense in terms of naming. It should be noted that if you kill Yorshka, like some sort of heartless monster, you do get one of the best faith-scaling chimes in the game. So, if you are some sort of black-hearted monster with no heart whatsoever, then you can do that. You kill Yorshka and get her chime, but I would never. I couldn't. With that little bit of errata out of the way, let's continue onwards into the great cathedral we have access to. It's guarded, however, by some Silver Knights, and as I mentioned before, these enemies, for whatever reason, are proving very difficult upon this playthrough for me. facing two at once here, as there is another one up there who will join the fight eventually, is quite difficult. Their hyper armor is considerable. That guy just took a fireball in the face and kept on trucking. I find these spear-wielding knights to be much more dangerous than the sword-wielding ones because they have so much reach. Speaking of the Dark Moon Covenant, back nearer to release, if you wanted to rank up in that particular group, then you would probably be farming these particular Silver Knights for basically forever, because they drop, occasionally, Proofs of Concord Kept, which normally were basically unobtainable because you could never get any bites for that covenant. Now it seems much better. There's one more Silver Knight here, and he has red eyes, which means he is strong. Stronger, anyway. However, since he's alone, he's a bit easier to deal with, I have found. There aren't many Silver Knights in the game, but those that are there are quite formidable. He was guarding the soul of a crestfallen knight, which is next tier up in soul consumable items. I believe that one gives 10,000 per use, which is pretty significant even at this point. We'll come back to that sign in a little bit. I have a reason for delaying interacting with it. Just checking for items, and maybe hostile gargoyles hiding around the corners. Can never be too careful. Oh no. In my first playthrough, this actually made me genuinely sad. The giant blacksmith who aided you in Dark Souls 1 has passed away, leaving only his coal. Let's pay him respects before we move on. Strong he was, forage he could. Reminds me of the giant archer back in the Undead Parish. I wonder how he's faring. Oh, hello up there. Bit of a glancing blow, but it did knock him off his perch. This is the other deep accursed in the game. We found our first one back in the Cathedral of the Deep. So we know that somewhere around here, Aldrich's faithful are lurking about. If you don't notice him and knock him down, that deep accursed can ambush you later as you go to open the double doors in the front. Something that should probably be avoided, if at all possible. But the deep accursed are much less bothersome than the Pontiff beasts, so it's not the end of the world if you do get the drop on you. The blue-robed deacons here are fairly tough as far as deacons go, but they're still not particularly difficult. Any danger you face from them probably comes from either sniping you unawares or the big fat guys having much more poise than you accounted for. Or both. There's enough of them. There's also some slimes littering the landscape. I'm feeling a little bit uncharitable towards this guy for whatever reason, so I'm sort of cheesing him. drops Aldrich's Ruby, which is a companion piece to Aldrich's Sapphire. This one restores HP upon critical hits, as opposed to FP. Honestly, I would say that it's less useful simply because there's so much healing available in this game, while FP can be a more precious commodity if you're not speccing hard into attunement. Still, anything that does give you a little bit of extra health is not bad. Unlike the slimes in the Demon Ruins, these are very much vulnerable to fire and will go down with a single Great Combustion, or probably any recently leveled Pyromancy at this point. If you put any upgrades at all, or spec into Pyromancy at all, they will probably go down in 1 hit or less. 1 hit or less. 2 hits or less, I guess would be better to say. It would be difficult to kill things in 0 hits. You just look at them and they die. That would be a pretty useful power. Slimes are more of a nuisance than anything. Even if you don't have the necessary firepower to take them out, they're so slow they're easy to avoid. They mostly just get underfoot when fighting the Deep Accursed or the Deacons, so I'm mostly doing this to vent my various frustrations with life. A plunging attack doesn't do much, though admittedly that was only with 1 hand. That Estus shard is deceptively difficult to see. It's entirely possible you will simply ignore it on your first run-through because you didn't think to explore every dank and dark corner of this place. Sort of hidden in plain sight by way of lowered visibility. Moonlight arrows are specialized arrows fired from a specialized bow that we don't have access to yet. Greyrat also sells them since we sent him to pillage here. The boss is not far at all, and depending on your build is not even really that difficult, but even so, I felt like I should at least go back to the bonfire and prepare myself. I bought Twisted Wall of Light a little while ago in preparation for this fight, because there's a couple of neat interactions with it. Basically, upon casting, all magical projectiles will disperse and not hit you. It's pretty useful in certain situations. Though I don't leverage it quite as much as I could, I'm sorry to say. I sort of ran out of guts. Also switching to my Astora Straight Sword for more raw damage output. The upcoming boss is a massive sword and doesn't stagger easily, so the extra poise damage from the Executioner's Greatsword doesn't do very much, nor does the FP restoration, since it doesn't summon any helpers. Unfortunately, I didn't think this quite through and switched too early, because now I sort of have to deal with the Silver Knights with a weapon not terribly well suited to staggering them. So I have some advice for you, and that advice is just run past these guys. They'll lose interest once you actually get into the cathedral proper. There's no reason to fight them unless you want to farm. And there's probably no reason to farm now anyway, unless you really want their set. slightly embarrassing, but not worth cutting out. Sometimes these things happen. Let it never be said I'm especially good at these games. Alright, let's try that again. Put our Ember back on and initiate plan runaway. None of the enemies in here are actually all that capable of tracking you if you're moving quickly, so provided you're vigilant with the fireballs coming directly at you, there's no real reason to stop for anything here. Mostly just killing these guys because I can. I suppose it's also worth noting that I do want to make a bit of a backtrack once I'm done with the boss, so... But then again... rest of the bonfire, so it doesn't matter. Nothing I do makes sense. It's fine. Alright. Enough of this. Let's get to fighting. It's time to throw down with Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Formerly known as Aldrich, Saint of the Deep. Now, there's a lot to unpack about this boss fight. Notably that Aldrich is seemingly using the form of Gwendolyn, the Dark Sun, a boss from Dark Souls 1 who had some fair significance to the plot if you went digging. There is some debate as to whether or not Aldrich also devoured Nito, or if his similarity to that boss is simply because that's just kind of how he looks naturally. Aldrich's primary method of attack is via range. He'll summon lots of dark particles to attack you with, and only occasionally go in for a melee hit like that. His most dangerous attack by far is the arrow rain that he utilizes. It becomes much more dangerous in the second Lord of Cinder phase. The arrow rain will track you aggressively and do a lot of damage if it connects at all. It's difficult to actually find an opportunity to get in on Aldrich while he's doing that. Using Twisted Wall of Light is a great way to sort of neuter his primary method of attack, though. I don't actually know if it works on the arrows, and as you can see here, I tried it, didn't have much success, and decided I'd better not fuck with it. The primary danger in this fight is simply getting wasted by too many projectiles on screen at once. It's easy to get caught in a trap where you're dodging one projectile and get hit by another. Also, they can go through the pillars, so don't think you're safe behind cover. Breaking lock and simply sprinting around is not a bad way to dodge the arrow rain. It's very devastating if it gets more than one tick on you, so be very careful. Fortunately for us, Aldrich is quite weak to fire, and we have a lot of fire packing, so he goes down without too much trouble. For a more involved struggle with Aldrich, please refer to my blind playthrough where I died a lot. The attentive among you, or at least those who play Dark Souls 1, will notice that this is the same arena where we fought Ornstein and Smough way back when, though, admittedly, it is a bit goopier now than then. In the days of yore, those two were guarding Princess Guinevere, or the illusion thereof. But there is nothing to be found, real or otherwise, in her chamber, save for one lonely treasure, the Sun Princess ring. Equipping this will allow you to steadily but slowly regenerate health simply by existing. Useful in long explorations, or if you're just unsure of what you're doing, it's a good item to help people who are struggling. Maybe a bit too far in the game for it to really fulfill that purpose, but it's still useful. It also stacks with blessed items, so you can get some pretty significant HP regen going if you put it on. Can't say I'm a fan of what Aldrich has done with the place. And that aside, that's 2 Lords of Cinder down, 2 to go. We've collected the ashes of both the Abyss Watchers and Aldrich. Now Yorm the Lonely Giant remains, as well as some other lord somewhere else. This is another instance of being summoned into an NPC's world to help them out, and in this case, it's Henri of Astora.
I thought it might be you. Then I'm afraid Horace. No. Only Ghost is my result.
It's time, actually, for a rematch with Aldrich, this time helping out Henri defeat his mortal enemy. It's a bit more difficult in some ways because you have less health and less Estus because you are a phantom, but Henri makes a wonderful meat shield and can dish out some respectable damage on his own. I would say that the main danger in this version of the fight is Henri getting killed to arrow rain, which can happen because even the hugely inflated HP values of friendly NPCs can't stand up to that kind of damage. And it's sort of up to the gods whether or not Henri decides to get out of the way. As you can see, he just took a casual 800 damage. But it's fine. He's tanking it like a champ. In a way, this can become sort of a DPS race because it's difficult to keep Henri alive for too long. Fortunately, we're well equipped with Forbidden Sun. Henri runs a very respectable game of interference, which makes it easy for us to get hits in, at least once these arrows stop raining. And down Aldrich goes for a second time.
I owe this to you. Thank you. Truly. Horace, we've done it. We really have.
This is more or less the good ending of Henri's questline. He settles his old demons of once being a child captive of Aldrich, just waiting to get eaten until he managed to escape with Horace. A nice touch is that his summon sign has prison stones around it, signifying that he was hoping till the very end that Horace would show up and help him once more. But it was us instead, because Horace suffered a terrible fate. It's a sad story, like most storylines in Dark Souls are, but Henri's duty is fulfilled. And that is nothing insignificant in this world. Let's head back to Firelink Shrine. We've got some stuff to transpose and some stuff to hand in.
Well met. That at last returned. Knowst thou the name Anri of Astora? The brave lad left this as thanks. Though gave no elucidation, so happened upon any twisted souls?
For finishing Henri's questline in this manner, talking to Ludlith will award you with his straight sword, which is a very unique weapon. Aldrich's soul gives us access to the Dark Moon longbow, which is really weird and not very good, and Life Hunt Scythe, which is kind of neat. We also have Sullivan's Soul to mess with, but the problem is I don't have the stats to wield either of his large weapons, so I guess I just pick the Great Sword of Judgment and go from there because it's the one closest to wieldability. Being a caster is hard sometimes.
Ah, most illustrious Lord Seeker, or should I say, Lord Slayer? Fine kindling for the thrones, is it not? Each soul truly worthy of lordship. And all slain by thy hand, to bind them to their thrones, even in death. Oh, I have no qualms, for as we are to our thrones, thou art to thy duty. In fact, methinks thou'st helped these poor lords along their rightful path. Ah, now heed this little warning from this little lord. Seek not the boy. He knoweth his fate, what will become of him upon his duty's end. He would not wish thee follow him.
For now, we'll heed that warning. But who knows when curiosity will get the better of us.
Well met. 'Tis good to see ye in good health. What needs smithing this day?
First we should turn in that shard.
My. The coal of that peaceable giant. Seems like ages passed. I imagine his passing was long ago. I miss the old bugger, I do. My thanks. I'll be sure this coal is put to good use. I'll be smithing weapons never afore seen by the likes of ye. It's but a small service to pay my humble respects.
We now have the ability to infuse chaos, lightning, and simple into our weapons. Chaos being the most useful to us. In a way, Andre wasn't really exaggerating. Chaos weapons are extremely powerful for this kind of build. I chose to infuse a rapier, mostly because I haven't demoed that kind of weapon much yet. We'll take a more in-depth look at it a little bit later on.
Prithee, be careful. I don't want to see my work squandered.
Before we wrap things up, we have one final duty to attend to. As Little is said, the Lord must be returned to their proper throne. Once I remember which one that is, it's actually the one right next to him. Saint Aldrich of the Deep. I imagine that this is a lord that few will miss. For you, Henri.